It was one of those mornings Los Angeles never advertises. Pale skies, cold wind, and a silence that felt heavier than usual. People hurried along Melrose Avenue, clutching coffee cups, sunglasses already on, though the sun hadn't quite broken through the haze. The smell of espresso and burnt toast floated through the air. It was an ordinary Friday. At least, that's what everyone thought. And then, she appeared. A small girl, barefoot, her hair tangled into uneven clumps, stood outside the cafe window. Her clothes were torn, a faded pink hoodie, 2 sizes too small, and jeans with the knees completely shredded. She looked about 12, maybe younger, but her eyes were older than any child's should be. At first, no one noticed her. Customers were glued to their phones, headphones in, their worlds sealed off. She stood still for several minutes, shivering, staring at a half-eaten croissant left on a plate near the window. Her lips moved silently, as though reciting something to herself, a prayer, maybe, or a promise. Then, she stepped closer to the door. "Please," she whispered to a woman exiting with a latte. "Just some food." The woman barely looked at her. One hand tightened around her bag, and she kept walking. The girl didn't cry. She just lowered her eyes, pressed her hand to her stomach, and sat down by the curb. A passing car splashed water over her sneakers, but she didn't move. She seemed to be waiting for someone or something. A man across the street watched her closely. Mid-40s, expensive coat, calm expression. He stood with his phone in hand, but wasn't scrolling, just watching. Every time the girl turned her head, he looked away. When she bent to tie her shoe, his fingers tightened around the phone until his knuckles whitened. Then the sound came. A soft rumble, tires on gravel. A black SUV slowed to a stop near the cafe entrance, the tinted window lowered halfway. At first, no one realized who it was. Then someone whispered, "That's Angelina Jolie." People lifted their phones instantly, excitement cutting through the air like electricity. A moment ago, they hadn't noticed the barefoot girl on the ground. Now, everyone noticed everything. The SUV door opened, and Angelina stepped out, her hair tied back, no makeup, wearing a loose white blouse and jeans. She'd just left a nearby UNICEF meeting. Her bodyguard followed, scanning the sidewalk. Cameras flashed, voices called her name, but she didn't look at them. Her eyes went straight to the girl. Angelina knelt beside her, speaking softly, almost whispering. "What's your name?" The girl's lips trembled. "Mira," she said. Angelina smiled faintly, then turned to her assistant. "Can we get her some food, please? Something warm." The girl's gaze flickered up for a moment, not at the food, not at Angelina, but at the man across the street, the one who had been watching her. He gave a small nod, almost imperceptible. Mira froze. Angelina noticed the change instantly. She said, "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe." But Mira didn't respond. Her eyes were wide now, darting between the man and the SUV. When Angelina reached for her hand, the girl flinched so hard that the cup of tea in her hand spilled down her sleeve. She whispered something under her breath, too low to hear over the camera clicks. Later, when the clip went viral online, people would replay that moment hundreds of times. They'd slow it down, zoom in, add captions. She said something. What did she whisper? But no one could make out the words. The only thing clear was what happened next. The man across the street walked towards them. Calm, confident. He smiled at Angelina, introduced himself as the girl's uncle, thanked her for her kindness. He said, "We've been through a rough week." He said, "We've been through a rough week," he said. "We've been through a rough week," he said. "We're heading home now." Mira gets anxious around crowds. Angelina hesitated. Something about his composure didn't sit right, but she had a meeting to attend, a schedule to keep. She asked if they needed assistance. He declined politely. The crowd pressed closer. The cameras multiplied. Within moments, the girl and the man slipped away into the noise of Los Angeles. By the time the SUV pulled away, the girl was gone. The video hit the internet that evening, under the title, "Angelina Jolie comforts homeless girl outside café. Heartwarming moment goes viral." Within hours, it had 5 million views. People praised the compassion, the humanity, the beauty of celebrity kindness. Only one person watched it differently. Dr. Evelyn Rhodes, a trauma counselor for refugee minors at a Los Angeles rehabilitation center, saw something everyone missed. She replayed the clip again and again, her coffee growing cold beside her. In the reflection of the cafe window, just before the man took Mira's arm, Evelyn saw the girl's lips move once more. This time, when she muted the sound and focused only on the movement of her lips, she read the words clearly. She said she'd come back for me. But Angelina never did, because she didn't know what she'd left behind. Evelyn leaned back, her pulse quickening. That wasn't the look of a child who'd been helped. That was the look of a child trapped and begging for someone to notice. Outside her office, the city lights flickered on. Evelyn paused the video, staring at the frozen frame. Mira's face halfway between hope and terror, the man's hand tightening on her shoulder. Something about it felt off. Not just sad, not just strange, wrong. And for Dr. Evelyn Rhodes, wrong was where every story began. Dr. Evelyn Rhodes had built a career on noticing what others missed. Her colleagues called it intuition. She called it the curse of seeing too much. By 41, she'd worked with war victims, displaced children, and young refugees carrying the kind of silence no therapy manual could fix. She was respected, calm, methodical. But that night, watching the cafe video again and again, Evelyn wasn't calm. She felt that strange pull in her gut. The same one she'd felt years ago when a missing child's eyes had stared back at her from a case file. The clip replayed in slow motion on her laptop. The girl's expression, the man's stillness, the way her hand trembled before reaching for the food. It wasn't hunger alone, it was fear. Evelyn scribbled a note on a pad beside her computer. Find girl, Mira, trace cafe incident, possible trafficking marker, handler, male, Eastern European accent. She stared at the last word, handler. It was a dangerous assumption, one she wasn't supposed to make. She wasn't law enforcement, she was a counselor. But sometimes, the lines blurred between healing and rescue. The next morning, the video made the local news again, this time as a feel-good moment. Jolie's team had issued a small statement praising community outreach programs for children. Evelyn muted the TV and turned to her email. Then she froze. A new intake form had arrived overnight. Name, Mira K. Age, 12. Guardian, Victor Kolev. Uncle. Referral, local social services. Emergency placement. Her hands went cold. The form listed her center, Haven House Refugee Rehabilitation Program, as the designated facility, the same name she'd seen in the viral clip's reflection on the cafe window. Haven House. It couldn't be coincidence. 2 hours later, they walked in. The girl, smaller than she'd seemed in the video, her hoodie hanging loosely off her shoulders, she clutched a small stuffed rabbit, gray and worn. The man, Victor, tall, sharp-featured, with a faint European accent that sounded carefully softened for American ears. "Good morning," Evelyn said, rising to greet them. "You must be Mira." Mira gave a small nod without looking up.
Victor smiled politely. "Thank you for taking her. She's had a difficult time." Evelyn motioned toward the seating area. "Are you her uncle?" "Yes. Her parents died in the conflict. We came here together." "Where from?" He hesitated just a beat too long. "Serbia." Evelyn's pen tapped against her notepad. Serbia. But the dialect she'd heard in the clip wasn't Serbian. It was Bulgarian, maybe Russian. She didn't correct him. "I see. And Mira's mother's name?" Another pause. "Elena." Mira flinched, subtle but visible. Evelyn leaned forward. "You're safe here, Mira. You can rest now." The girl's eyes flicked up for a moment, quick, calculating, then down again. Victor interrupted, smiling. "We appreciate your kindness, Doctor, but she doesn't like to talk about the past. Better we keep things simple, yes?" Evelyn nodded slowly. "Of course." But inside, her instinct screamed, he's controlling the narrative. The meeting went on for 30 minutes. Paperwork, questions, polite exchanges. Every answer Victor gave felt rehearsed. Every time Evelyn addressed Mira directly, Victor answered first. When she asked if Mira wanted to stay at the center, the girl whispered something under her breath, too faint to hear. "Sorry, Mira, can you repeat that?" But Victor's hand landed softly on the girl's shoulder. She said she's fine. And that was it. The session ended. Victor thanked her, shook her hand firmly, and led Mira out. Evelyn watched them walk down the hallway, something twisting inside her. The girl's posture, the stiffness in her movements, spoke louder than any words. That night, she couldn't sleep.
She sat in her office, lights dimmed, replaying their conversation in her mind. Then, she remembered something Mira had whispered when left alone for just a moment after Victor had stepped outside to sign a form. Her voice had been almost imperceptible. "She said she'd come back for me." Evelyn had assumed she meant a social worker, maybe a lost relative. But now, recalling the café video, she realized Mira was talking about Angelina Jolie? The realization hit her like a current. The girl had clung to that brief, fleeting act of kindness like a promise, believing the woman who gave her food would somehow come back to save her. Evelyn's throat tightened. She looked again at the intake records, the missing details, the unsigned consent form, the falsified address. Every instinct told her something was deeply wrong. But protocol said otherwise. As a counselor, she couldn't investigate independently. She had to go through child services, report her suspicions, wait for follow-up, a process that took days, sometimes weeks. But what if Mira didn't have weeks? She stared at her computer screen, cursor blinking beside the words, "Submit Official Concern Report." Her hand hovered over the mouse. Then, she closed the file instead. She would find out herself. That night, Evelyn logged into the internal database and began cross-checking records. Victor Kolev, no previous U.S. address, no verified refugee status, no documentation trail before 2 months ago. She searched the international database next and froze. Victor Kolev, Interpol Alert 2019. Suspected involvement in child exploitation and illegal migration network across the Balkans. Her blood ran cold. She printed the file, heart pounding, and tucked it into her bag. The next morning, she arrived early, but Mira and Victor never showed up. No call, no message, no trace. Evelyn contacted social services. They had no record of an official placement request. No one had sent them a file named Mira K. The entire intake submission was falsified. Someone had used Haven House as a cover. The city outside seemed louder that day. Sirens, traffic, noise pressing against the office windows. Evelyn sat at her desk, gripping the printed alert, trying to decide what to do. Call the police? Or find them first? Then her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered, a faint voice, barely audible. Dr. Rhodes? Her breath caught. Mira? Silence. Then, he said you're not supposed to look for me. The line went dead. Evelyn stared at her phone, her heart hammering so hard she thought she might be sick. She replayed the words in her head again and again. He said you're not supposed to look for me. Which meant Victor knew. He knew she'd started digging. And if he knew, then so did whoever he worked for. Evelyn stood slowly, turning off the office light. The sun had set outside, casting long shadows through the hallway. She looked down at the printed Interpol file in her hand, Victor's face staring back from a grainy photo. There was no going back now. If Mira was still out there, she was running out of time. When Mira returns alone days later, terrified and silent, she slips Evelyn a cryptic note that changes everything. But behind the words hides something far darker, that a message from the shadows that Mira can't say out loud.
It had been 2 days since the video blew up across the internet. 2 days since Evelyn had seen the girl from the cafe. News anchors called it a random act of kindness. Influencers debated the authenticity of celebrity charity, and journalists dug through social feeds for any angle. But Evelyn couldn't shake one detail: the man beside the girl. The way he hovered behind her like a shadow, never meeting Jolie's eyes, his posture taut, protective, yet possessive. It wasn't the stance of a guardian. It was the stance of someone guarding something. That Wednesday morning, the counseling center was unusually quiet. The receptionist, Tasha, was about to close intake for the day when the door creaked open. A man stepped in, broad-shouldered, his suit too crisp for the neighborhood. Beside him, her, Mira. The same tangled hair, the same hollowed cheeks, but her eyes, they were different now. Duller, as though someone had turned the light inside her down to a faint glow. Tasha looked up. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment?" The man placed his hand on Mira's shoulder. "Yes, with Dr. Rhodes. My niece has trouble adjusting." His accent had the faint trace of Eastern Europe. Russian or Serbian, maybe. Evelyn couldn't quite place it. Evelyn came out of her office mid-sentence from a phone call and froze. You were at the café," she said softly. "Ah, so you've seen the video too. Internet makes everything famous, no?" Mira didn't look at either of them. She stood silently, her small fingers gripping the strap of her backpack. Evelyn forced a polite nod and ushered them into her office. The man introduced himself as Victor. "Victor Uncle," he corrected, as if anticipating the question. He spoke in clipped sentences, rehearsed, practiced. "His parents, gone, accident. She stays with me now. New country, new life." Evelyn jotted notes, but watched him carefully. His every word was smooth, deliberate. But the moment she turned to Mira, he subtly leaned forward, a quiet signal that said, "Don't say too much." "Tell me, Mira," Evelyn said gently, "how are you feeling today?" Mira shrugged. "Fine." Her voice was barely audible. Evelyn waited, but the silence thickened. Victor checked his watch. "We have little time. Just help her forget. She has bad dreams." Evelyn nodded slowly, pretending to go along. "Of course. Maybe I can see her again next week." Victor hesitated, then gave a quick nod. "Maybe." He stood, guided Mira out, and paused at the door. "Please, no questions about the past. She forgets better that way." When they left, Evelyn sat motionless for a long moment. Something about that visit didn't sit right. The precision of his story, the lack of emotion, the strange control. Then, as she reached for her notepad, she noticed something. A small, torn corner of paper lay near her desk leg.
scribbled handwriting and faint pencil marks. She picked it up. It read, "She said she'd come back for me." Her heart stilled. She? Who was she? Evelyn looked up, instinctively glancing toward the door where they'd exited. But the hallway was empty now, echoing with the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. She didn't yet know that the she Mira referred to wasn't Angelina Jolie. It was someone else. Someone still out there. Evelyn spent that night at her desk, the lights off, the paper with Mira's message lying flat beneath her palm. She said she'd come back for me. The words played in loops through her mind like a haunting melody that refused to end. She pulled up the intake records Victor had filled out earlier that day. Every line was too perfect, typed, not handwritten, with no smudges or crossouts. Most guardians scribbled, they corrected, hesitated, sometimes left blanks. But this file looked like it had been printed in advance. Under previous residence, Victor had written Warsaw, Poland. Under mother's name, deceased. Under father's name, unknown. A complete narrative. Too neat, too controlled. Then Evelyn noticed something small but unsettling. The date of birth. If accurate, Mira would be 12. Yet the girl she met today was no older than 9, maybe 10 at most. Evelyn leaned back, rubbing her temple. Why lie about her age? She called Tasha into her office the next morning. "Hey, remember that man yesterday, Victor? Could you check if he left any contact number besides the one on the form?"
Tasha nodded and scrolled through the logbook. "Yeah, here. Says emergency contact and lists a private number." She frowned. "Weird, though. The prefix doesn't match any LA network. It's international." "Where to?" "Belgrade." Evelyn's stomach tightened. She made a few discreet calls, a social worker at Homeland Security and old colleague at Child Protective Services, but both came back with the same thing. No record of a recent visa under Victor's full name. By noon, Evelyn was staring at her wall of case notes. Mira's face was there now, pinned beside dozens of other children she'd helped, but something about her picture, the one from the café, felt different. Those eyes, dark and too calm for a child, were silently pleading, "See me, please." That afternoon, Victor called the center. His tone was polite but firm. "We will not need further appointments. She is adjusting fine. Thank you." Evelyn tried to push back. "Victor, trauma doesn't disappear in a week. She needs follow-up." He cut her off. "No need. I know what's best for my niece." Click. Just like that. That evening, she walked out of the center, the city buzzing around her in its usual fog of neon signs and sirens. But her mind kept returning to Mira's face and that note. At a red light, she saw her reflection in the car window, tired, restless, obsessed. She told herself to let it go, but some part of her, the part that had seen too many children slip through the cracks, whispered otherwise. The next morning, a manila envelope waited at her door. No return address. Inside were several photographs, blurry, grainy, taken from a distance. Mira standing at the same cafe. Mira in the back seat of a black SUV. And in one, Victor, glancing over his shoulder at the camera, his mouth curved in a knowing half-smile. On the back of the last photo, a line was written in pencil. "She's not his niece." Evelyn's hands trembled as she flipped the photo over again, studying Victor's face. The sunlight caught the edge of a tattoo behind his ear, a small red circle. That night, Evelyn went back to the office and pulled out old files, trafficking cases from the past decade, incidents tied to Eastern European syndicates. She wasn't looking for proof. She was looking for a pattern. And she found one. Across several reports, police had recovered camera equipment marked with the same symbol, a red circle used as a watermark in underground darkroom photography rings. That same symbol was tattooed behind Victor's ear. Evelyn closed the file, her heart pounding. Mira wasn't just another child with trauma, she was living inside it. And Victor wasn't a guardian. He was a handler.
The storm hit Los Angeles that Thursday night, one of those sudden bursts of rain that felt almost cleansing to the city. But inside Evelyn's office, nothing felt clean. Her mind was a whirlpool of half-formed theories, screenshots, and that face, Mira's, staring back from her wall. She'd spent hours on trafficking forums, government archives, and even obscure photographer registries. The same red circle symbol kept reappearing, tied to a vanished photography collective known as Krasny Nocturne. The FBI had once described it as a closed-door art ring, but whispers in survivor circles called it something else, the Red Light Network. When the storm finally quieted, Evelyn made herself a coffee, her fifth for the night, and sank into the chair by the window. Her office smelled faintly of wet paper and exhaustion. That's when she noticed it. A folded scrap of paper, tucked halfway under her coffee cup. She hadn't seen it before. The edges were damp from the condensation. She unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was small, shaky, and pressed hard into the page. She says the red light hurts. Her breath caught. There it was again, she. And now the red light. Evelyn sat back, the words spinning in her head. She looked toward her office door. It was locked. No one had been in here since she arrived that morning, so how did the note get here? She checked the security feed from her hallway. The time-stamped blinked 4:12 p.m. She'd stepped out for 5 minutes to grab a sandwich. During that time, a small figure passed across the hall camera. Thin frame, hoodie pulled up, soaked shoes. Mira. Evelyn replayed it 3 times, freezing the frame where the girl glanced at the camera just for a second before slipping away. There was no sign of Victor. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She reached for her phone, dialed Tasha. "I need you to pull the center's external footage for today, from noon to 5, and don't tell anyone." "Is everything okay, Dr. Rhodes?" "No," Evelyn said quietly. "It's not." She hung up, turned the note over. On the back, faint pencil impressions. She shaded over them with a graphite stick. The imprint revealed numbers. 174932LB. Coordinates? A code? Evelyn checked her maps. 1749LB matched an address. 1749 La Brea Avenue. A house. Registered to a man named Victor M. Dragovich. Evelyn stared at the name, bile rising in her throat. The house was less than 20 minutes from her office. She spent the next hour pacing, trying to reason with herself. She was a counselor, not law enforcement. But she also knew that if she called CPS or the police now, they'd need a warrant, something that would take days. Mira might not have days. At 11:47 p.m., she grabbed her keys. Rain was still falling, streetlights painting gold lines across her windshield. La Brea Avenue stretched long and empty, a ghostly corridor of warehouses and old studio buildings. She parked across the street from 1749. The house sat behind an iron gate, half hidden by overgrown ivy. A single light glowed in an upstairs window. She sat in her car, heart hammering, watching. Then she saw it, a flicker of movement in the lower window, the faint flash of red. Camera light. Evelyn swallowed hard, pulled her phone out, and hit record. October 17th, 11:58 p.m. Observing suspected trafficking location connected to minor Mira D. and guardian Victor Dragovich.
She opened her car door, stepped into the rain. Each footstep echoed against the wet pavement. The air smelled metallic, thick with tension. Then something shifted in the shadows near the gate, a figure moving inside the yard. A child's silhouette, small, fragile, watching her. "Mira," Evelyn whispered. The silhouette froze, then vanished back into the dark. Evelyn's stomach dropped. The red light flickered again. Whatever was happening inside that house, it wasn't over. It was only beginning, and the next move would decide everything. She pulled out her phone to call the police, but before she could press dial, a message appeared on her screen. "Unknown number. Stop looking, doctor." Her blood ran cold.
Rain clung to Los Angeles like a fever that wouldn't break. Every street lamp along La Brea Avenue flickered like it was trying to warn her. Evelyn stood just beyond the gate of 1749, her umbrella trembling in her grip. She glanced down at her phone again. That same message stared back at her. "Unknown number. Stop looking, doctor." Her heart pounded so hard it made her fingers shake. How did they know she was here? She hit record again on her phone's voice memo app. "It's 12:06 a.m. I've received a threat warning me to stop investigating. I'm at the La Brea property. I can see light movement inside." She slipped through a gap in the gate, careful not to let it clang shut behind her. The house loomed above, 2 stories of faded white paint and blacked-out windows. Vines strangled the porch railings. It smelled of rust and something sweeter, something wrong. As she crept closer, she noticed tiny cameras tucked beneath the eaves, all pointing outward. Not security, surveillance. Watching the street, watching her. Through the rain, Evelyn saw the faint flicker of that red light again, pulsing from a basement window. The note echoed in her head. "She says the red light hurts." Her stomach twisted. She rounded the side of the house, boots sinking into mud. The basement window was half buried, smeared with condensation. Evelyn crouched, peered through the gap. Inside, flashes, camera lights, a pale backdrop, a tripod, and a figure standing motionless in front of it, small, thin, hair slicked down by water or sweat. Mira. Evelyn covered her mouth to stop a gasp. Victor's voice came from somewhere behind the camera, calm, rehearsed, foreign. "Look up, smile, show them your eyes." The girl didn't move. "I said smile," he snapped, the sound slicing through the hum of the rain. Evelyn felt something inside her break. She reached for her phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. But before the operator could pick up, a car pulled into the driveway, headlights sweeping across her. She ducked behind a bush, heart slamming. 2 men stepped out. Neither was Victor. Both carried cases, hard, silver ones, equipment. They didn't speak, only exchanged nods before heading toward the basement door. Evelyn's throat tightened. She couldn't wait. She darted back to her car, fingers slipping over the wet door handle. Once inside, she locked the doors and whispered into the phone, 1749 La Brea Avenue. I need LAPD now. Possible human trafficking in progress. There's a minor, maybe 12. Please hurry. The dispatch's voice came through steady and professional. Ma'am, stay in your vehicle. Officers are en route. But staying still wasn't an option. She turned off her headlights, watching the house through the rain. In the basement window, shadows moved frantically now, the red light shifting, flickering. A sharp, short scream, muffled.
Evelyn's body moved before her brain caught up. She threw open the door, sprinted across the street. Her shoes slapped the wet pavement, echoing like gunfire in the night. The basement door wasn't locked. She yanked it open and stumbled into the dark. The smell hit first: damp concrete, chemicals, and fear. "Mira!" she called, voice trembling. A camera lay on its side, still recording. The red light blinked weakly. "Who's there?" a man's voice barked from the corner. Evelyn froze, catching the silhouette of one of the men turning toward her. "Police are coming," she shouted. "It's over." He lunged. Evelyn ducked, swung the nearest thing she could grab, a metal pole, striking him across the shoulder. The camera crashed to the ground. The other man shouted something in another language, grabbed a cable, and bolted up the stairs. Evelyn turned, and there, crouched behind a crate, was Mira, barefoot, shivering. Hey, it's okay. My name's Evelyn." She crouched low, voice soft but urgent. "I'm here to help you." Mira's lips moved, voice hoarse. "He said if I talk, they'll hurt her." Evelyn blinked. "Hurt who?" The girl's trembling hand lifted. She pointed toward a small cot in the corner. A younger child lay there, maybe 6. Evelyn's knees went weak. Oh my God! Sirens wailed in the distance, faint but growing. She pulled both girls close, whispering, "You're safe now. I promise." But as she led them toward the stairs, Mira suddenly stiffened. Through the sound of rain and sirens, a calm, distant voice came through the house's intercom, distorted but unmistakable. "You shouldn't have come here, Doctor."
Evelyn froze. The voice was Victor's. He wasn't inside the house. He was watching. And somehow, he already knew everything. The lights flickered once, then went out completely. The blackout lasted no more than 6 seconds, but to Evelyn, it stretched like an eternity. The sirens grew louder outside, slashing through the storm. She crouched in the dark, clutching both girls against her, whispering, "Don't move, don't make a sound." Then, faintly, the generator kicked back on. The red light returned. Not from a lamp, from the camera. The lens turned on its own, motorized, remote-controlled, tracking her movement. Evelyn's breath hitched. Someone was operating it from elsewhere. Through the static hiss of the intercom came Victor's distorted voice again. Calm. Patient. "Brave, Dr. Rhodes. Very brave. But you never stopped to ask why the girl was outside that café, did you?" Her pulse spiked. "Where are you?" she shouted, glancing around for a speaker. "You're standing in what you think is the crime scene, but this is just one screen in 1,000. Evelyn grabbed a piece of equipment from the table, a small portable drive, and stuffed it into her pocket. "The police are here. It's over," she said, trying to sound steady. He laughed, soft, low, and horribly amused. "Oh, doctor, you think Los Angeles is the center. Check the folder named Patient 0. The intercom clicked off. At that exact moment, the LAPD broke down the door upstairs. "LAPD! Hands where I can see them!" The men who had been inside were gone. Only the storm remained. Evelyn rushed the girls upstairs. Officers surrounded her, weapons drawn, barking orders. "She's got the victims! Medical unit now!" As paramedics ushered the girls away, Evelyn turned back toward the basement door. Something inside her wouldn't let her leave. She went back down, flashlight in hand. The basement was worse under full light. Stacks of hard drives, each labeled in neat handwriting: Lisbon, Athens, Dubai, Osaka, and one folder left open on the main workstation screen. Patient 0. Evelyn double-clicked. The screen blinked to life, showing footage of Mira, smaller, younger, maybe 9 or 10, an electric bed, electrodes on her temples, a man's voice, Victor's, saying, "The experiment continues. Subject demonstrates attachment confusion and sensory response to light exposure. Note correlation with trauma recall under stimulus." Evelyn's mouth dried. This wasn't just exploitation. This was conditioning. She scrolled further. File names filled the drive. Subject 03, Subject 07, Subject 09, Camila. Camila, the smaller girl, the one asleep on the cot. Evelyn clapped her hand over her mouth, nausea rolling through her. He hadn't just taken them. He'd experimented on them, recorded their trauma, programmed responses, turned pain into data. And patient 0? That was Mira, the first. She copied as many files as she could onto a portable SSD. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Soft, deliberate. A detective, Ramirez, stepped into the room, gun holstered but ready. "Dr. Rhodes, we need you upstairs. The girls are safe, but we're pulling everyone out. There are tripwires under the floorboards." "Tripwires?" Evelyn blinked. Ramirez nodded grimly. This place was rigged to burn. And as if on cue, something popped, faint, sharp, followed by a hiss. Smoke began curling up through the cracks in the wooden floor. Evelyn and Ramirez bolted upstairs, bursting into the cold night just as flames licked the windows behind them. Within seconds, 1749 La Brea was an inferno. The evidence, the house, the setup, all of it turning to ash. Evelyn clutched the portable drive in her coat pocket, feeling its small, solid weight against her palm. It was the only thing left. Hours later, in a dimly lit interrogation room, Detective Ramirez placed a stack of papers on the table. "We pulled Viktor Dragovich's record. He's been missing for 5 years, declared dead in 2019, but his passport was used last month in Serbia." "You're saying he's alive?"
Ramirez looked up. "I'm saying this man's reach is international, and if he knows you went into that basement, he'll come for you next." Evelyn leaned back, silent, exhausted, watching the reflection of the one-way mirror. Somewhere out there, a man who was supposed to be dead had orchestrated a trafficking and psychological conditioning ring spanning continents, and she had the proof in her pocket. But as she left the station that morning, the sky just beginning to pale, she noticed something taped to her car windshield. A single Polaroid, taken from the night before. Her, standing in the rain, looking up at the house. On the back, written in the same jagged handwriting as the note under her cup. "You found one. There are 17 more." Los Angeles dawned gray and thin that morning, a kind of false calm that comes after the storm, where everything looks clean, but nothing actually is. Evelyn hadn't slept. The drive she'd taken from the La Brea basement sat on the table in front of her, its tiny LED still blinking like a heartbeat. She hadn't dared plug it into her office computer. Instead, she borrowed a forensic laptop from Detective Ramirez's tech unit, one isolated from all networks. When she finally opened it, she realized the folder structure wasn't random. It was organized, meticulous, clinical. Each city, Lisbon, Athens, Osaka, Dubai, Toronto, Los Angeles, contained a single file, a numbered burl, a date, a location,
and a red dot stamped beside their photo. 17. 17 victims, each filmed, documented, moved, and sold, all between 2012 and 2024. And every few years, one name reappeared in the metadata as administrator, V. Dragovich. Her throat tightened. You've been doing this for over a decade. Why Mira? Why her first? Her eyes traced the timestamps. Mira's files started the earliest, patient 0. The others followed the same pattern: conditioning sessions, behavioral data, interviews. But Mira's final file was different. It wasn't numbered. It was titled Inheritance. Evelyn double-clicked. The video opened with static, then Victor's voice. Calm, faintly accented. Every system requires legacy, and legacy begins with loyalty. The camera turned. A younger Mira sat strapped to a chair, her eyes dull, unfocused. She wasn't crying. She wasn't fighting. Just gone. Victor leaned into frame, half-shadowed. You are my first. You will create the others, and you will never leave me. The footage cut to black. Evelyn's stomach turned. Oh, God. She closed the laptop, palm slick with sweat. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number again. Unknown number. Nice of you to open my files. How's the little one? She froze. Camila? She grabbed her coat, bolted from the office, and called Ramirez mid-stride. They're watching. He's alive. He's active. And he knows where the girl is. Ramirez's voice snapped through the line. We've got officers outside the safe house. Calm down. The line cut. Silence. Then static. Then laughter. Evelyn stopped in the middle of the street, rain beginning to fall again, her breath fogged in the cool air. That laughter wasn't coming from her phone anymore. It was coming from a nearby car, a black SUV idling across the road. The back window rolled down. A woman's face appeared, cold, unfamiliar. But in her eyes, something recognizable. A reflection of trauma Evelyn had seen 100 times. She was older, but her face, it looked like Mira. But that was impossible. Mira was safe, asleep at the hospital under protective custody. The woman smiled faintly, almost kindly, and whispered through the crack in the glass, "You're late, doctor." Then the SUV peeled away, tires screeching through puddles. Evelyn sprinted toward it, but by the time she reached the corner, it was gone. She called Ramirez again, voice breaking. She looked just like her, a copy, a clone, or I don't know what this is, but it's not over. He's making more of them. Back at the station, tech analysts decrypted the rest of the files. Each subject shared the same genetic marker, identical sequences repeated across multiple victims. 17 girls, all biologically linked, engineered. A single donor, Victor. It wasn't just trafficking, it was creation. Evelyn stared at the data on the screen, a nausea rising. He didn't just exploit them, he built them. He was trying to build his own family. Ramirez crossed his arms. If that's true, then Mira wasn't the first victim. No, Evelyn said slowly, her eyes narrowing. She was the first success.
The drive suddenly flickered. A new file appeared on its own, timestamped just moments ago. Live feed 18. They opened it. The feed showed a dimly lit basement, different from La Brea. Cold concrete, foreign signage on the wall. Beograd. In the center of the frame, a young girl sat tied to a chair, crying softly. Behind her, a man stepped into the light. Victor. Older. Scarred.
smiling directly at the camera. 17 were prototypes, but number 18, she's special. She belongs to you, Dr. Rhodes. You made this possible. Then he leaned closer. You found one. Now come find the rest. The feed cut out. Evelyn and Ramirez stared at the blank screen. Then Ramirez muttered, Beograd, Serbia. Evelyn's pulse pounded in her ears. He's calling me there. He wants me to follow. Ramirez looked at her like she'd lost her mind. You're not seriously considering? But she already was. Because behind Victor's arrogance, Evelyn had heard something else in his voice. Fatigue. Desperation. A man reaching for legacy before his empire fell apart. And that meant he could be stopped, but only if she went straight into his territory. As she walked out into the rain, the city humming beneath her feet, Evelyn knew this wasn't about one girl anymore. It was about 17 ghosts, and the man who refused to let them rest. The plane touched down under a slate-colored sky. The rain hadn't stopped since Los Angeles, as if the storm had followed her across the world. Belgrade was cold, quieter than she'd imagined, the city's worn buildings standing like silent witnesses to history. Evelyn stepped out of the terminal with only a single bag and a folded photo of Mira in her coat pocket. Her breath rose in clouds. The air smelled of damp stone and diesel, and everything felt like memory, heavy and gray. Ramirez had fought to come along, but she'd refused. You'll slow me down, she'd said. He'd called her reckless. She hadn't disagreed. She told no one she was coming here except one contact, a journalist named Mila Kovac, a local who'd been investigating child disappearances in Eastern Europe for over a decade. She'd emailed her the night before, meet me at the Bridge of Brotherhood at dusk. Come alone. Now, as Evelyn crossed the wide bridge over the Sava River, the sky bruised purple. She saw her, a woman in a long coat, smoking the cigarette, watching the water. Milakovic? Evelyn called softly. The woman turned, her face pale under the streetlight. You made it. They walked together to a nearby café, old wood floors, low light, strong coffee. Mila spread a folder across the table. Photos, maps, newspaper clippings. Victor Dragovich, Mila said, tapping the man's face. Born in Serbia, former psychologist, specialized in trauma recovery. But around 2010, he vanished from official records. Then, reports of missing girls began popping up across Europe, always the same profile. Orphans, refugees, girls without identity. Evelyn's stomach twisted. He was a psychologist? Once, Mila said. Then he became something else. He called it continuity through obedience. He believed that loyalty could be bred, not earned. Evelyn leaned in. Where is he now? Mila hesitated, glancing toward the window. He's got property outside the city, an old sanatorium in the hills. Locals call it the White Home. It was a psychiatric facility in the 1970s, shut down after the war, but over the last few years, people have seen lights there again. Trucks, guards, children's voices. Evelyn's pulse quickened. Then that's the 18th? Mila nodded grimly. Maybe, but you won't get near it alone. I have to, Evelyn's voice trembled, but her eyes were steel. He left that video for me. He wants me to come. Mila exhaled smoke, studying her. You sound like someone who's already decided to die. Evelyn smiled faintly. No, I sound like someone who's decided to stop him. They drove out of the city after midnight, headlights slicing through the mist. The road wound upward, narrowing until it became more dirt than asphalt. Trees loomed on both sides, branches clawing the car like fingers. At last, the sanatorium appeared, white stone, cracked and stained with moss. The iron gates hung crooked. A faded sign read, Dom Svetlist, Home of Light. How poetic,
Mila murmured.
They parked half a mile down the road and continued on foot. Evelyn's flashlight cut across rusted windows and barbed wire. Somewhere inside, a generator hummed softly. Then, movement. A shadow passed behind a curtain. Evelyn touched her arm. We're not alone. They crept closer, through a broken side door. The air inside was thick with the smell of bleach and old metal. A faint lullaby echoed through the hall, distorted, mechanical, as if coming from an old speaker. It was Mira's voice. Evelyn froze. That's her. They followed the sound down a corridor lined with rooms, each door numbered, each one sealed. Through the small windows, Evelyn saw flickers of movement, children sitting silently, staring at the walls. Clones. Copies. All of them identical. Her breath hitched. Oh God, he really did it. Mila whispered, This isn't a trafficking ring. It's a farm. At the end of the hall, a heavy door stood slightly ajar. Inside was a wide room, part lab, part nursery. Monitors blinked, tubes ran into machines, and at the center of it all stood Viktor Dragovich. He looked older now, gray streaks in his hair, a faint limp in his left leg, but his eyes burned with the same cold brilliance. Dr. Rhodes, he said, smiling as if they were meeting at a conference. You came. Evelyn stepped forward, fury and horror tangled in her voice. You've been using these children as, not using, preserving. Humanity discards its broken. I give them purpose. Obedience frees them from suffering. They're slaves, she spat. They're order, Viktor said, his voice low and reverent. You saw it yourself, the chaos in that café, the violence of survival. I only remove their pain. Evelyn's hands shook. You destroyed Mira's mind. You turned her into... Mira? Viktor smiled faintly. She was my masterpiece, but even art must evolve. He gestured to the far wall, a glass enclosure lit in soft blue. Inside, a girl sat quietly, her hair dark, her eyes hollow. She was identical to Mira, but younger. Number 18, the first to be born free of fear. Her loyalty is perfect. Evelyn's breath came short. What have you done? I've created continuity, Viktor said softly. A world where loyalty is inherited, not learned. You helped me understand that, Doctor. Your compassion, your obsession with saving the broken, it gave me the formula. Her heart pounded. You're insane. He tilted his head. Perhaps, but tell me, what if I've ended suffering for them? Would you still stop me? Before she could answer, a gunshot shattered the silence. Viktor flinched, clutching his arm, blood blossoming through his sleeve. Mila stood in the doorway, gun trembling in her hands. Step away from the child. Viktor's eyes flicked between them, then to the girl behind the glass. You can't save her. She's not like the others. Evelyn rushed forward, slamming the control panel. The glass enclosure hissed open. She pulled the girl out, wrapping her in her coat. You're safe now. You're free. But the girl didn't move. She just stared up at Evelyn and said quietly, She told me you would come. Then alarms blared. Red lights flooded the hallway. Viktor smiled, blood streaking his face. You never understood, did you? Freedom isn't something they want. Guards stormed in. Gunfire erupted. Mila dragged Evelyn and the girl toward the exit. They sprinted through the corridor, the children in the rooms pounding on their glass doors, faces blank, soundless.
Outside, rain poured as they stumbled into the trees. Behind them, the sanitarium burned, flames tearing through decades of silence. Mila gasped, leaning against a tree. "Did you get her?" Evelyn looked down at the girl whose small hands clutched the locket around her neck, the same locket Mira had once worn. She nodded slowly. "Yeah," she whispered, "we got her." But as lightning split the sky, Evelyn saw something in the girl's eyes. A flicker of recognition, a knowing smile. "She's watching you," the girl whispered, softly, voice eerily calm. "From the others." Evelyn froze. "What do you mean, the others?" The girl pointed toward the flames. Through the burning windows, shadows moved, dozens of them, not fleeing, waiting.
The flames devoured the sky. Black smoke curled into the clouds, swallowing the sanatorium whole. The ghosts, the machines, the memories. Evelyn could hear the crackle of collapsing walls behind her, but she couldn't move. The girl's words, "She's watching you," from the others, replayed in her mind, quiet as an echo. Mila grabbed her arm. "Evelyn, we have to move. The fire will reach the road soon." Evelyn turned, eyes fixed on the building. The silhouettes inside weren't random. They moved in rhythm, dozens of small figures standing perfectly still, heads turned toward the flames as if waiting for command. And in the chaos, between bursts of firelight, she saw a shape, tall, deliberate, standing among them. Victor. He was still inside. But he wasn't running. He was watching. A wall collapsed, flames roared higher. Evelyn shook herself back to motion and followed Mila down the forest trail, clutching the girl, number 18, close against her chest. By the time they reached the car, sirens wailed in the distance. Local police, fire engines, the world catching up at last. Evelyn buckled the child into the back seat, her hands shaking. Mila started the car, headlights cutting through the rain. "Where do we go?" Evelyn didn't answer. She stared out the window as the forest blurred past. "Evelyn?" She turned slowly. "That girl back there, Mira, she wasn't just his experiment. She was his message. Every version of her is connected somehow. He wanted me to find her because he knew I'd see him in her." Mila frowned. "What do you mean?" Evelyn exhaled. "I was his student." Mila slammed the brakes. "What?" Evelyn's voice cracked. "Before the disappearances started, I worked under him in a trauma study program in Berlin. He said he was helping war children reintegrate. I left when his methods got strange. He wanted to erase memory through induced obedience therapy. I filed a complaint. He vanished 2 weeks later." Mila's eyes widened. "So he?" Evelyn whispered. "He blamed me for exposing him. He built this, all of this, to prove his theory worked, to prove he was right." The girl stirred in the back seat, murmuring softly in her sleep. "He said you'd come home." Evelyn looked back at her, heart sinking. "He said what?" The girl opened her eyes, calm, unfocused. "He's here," she whispered. Mila reached up to turn off the radio, but it wouldn't budge. The car lights flickered, engine sputtering. "Continuity," the voice said, now echoing faintly through the speakers and from the girl's lips. "You call it evil. I call it inheritance." The girl's pupils dilated until her eyes were nearly black. She smiled faintly, Victor's smile. Evelyn's heart slammed against her ribs. "Stop the car!" Mila pulled to the shoulder. Evelyn twisted in her seat, gripping the girl by the shoulders. "Listen to me! You're not him! You're not what he made you!" The girl blinked. A tear rolled down her cheek. "He said you'd say that."
Then she reached up and pressed something into Evelyn's hand, a small metal capsule, no larger than a coin. It was marked with Victor's initials, V.D. Inside, a folded strip of paper, Evelyn opened it with trembling fingers. Continuity requires the willing. The next phase begins where the old world burns. Below it, coordinates. Not Serbia. Not Europe. Los Angeles.
Evelyn's blood ran cold. "He's not gone," she whispered. "He's duplicated." Mila frowned. "What do you mean, duplicated?" Evelyn turned to her, voice shaking. "That drive we found, the files, they weren't just records, they were templates. He's been uploading behavioral blueprints into them. He wasn't cloning bodies, he was cloning minds. And now—" She looked at the girl, whose voice shifted, softer now, almost pleading. "Help me," she whispered. "Please. It's so loud in here." Evelyn's tears spilled over. "Oh, God, what did he do to you?" Then the sirens grew louder. Police cars appeared down the road, their lights flashing through the mist. Mila exhaled. "They'll take her somewhere safe." Evelyn shook her head. "No. If they take her, she disappears into another system. I can't let that happen again." Mila looked at her. "Then what do you want to do?" Evelyn stared out at the horizon, smoke still rising in the distance, mingling with the storm. She said quietly, "End it. Completely." 2 weeks later, Los Angeles, news outlets ran the same headline. "Sanatorium fire in Serbia, 28 confirmed dead. No trace of Viktor Dragovich." Evelyn sat alone in her apartment, blinds drawn, the capsule still in her hand. On her desk, the decryptive drive blinked again. A new file had appeared. Continuity launch.exe. She didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she looked at the girl asleep on her couch, number 18, breathing softly, human again. Or trying to be. Evelyn whispered to her, "We end this together, okay?" The girl murmured in her sleep. "He said endings don't exist." Evelyn exhaled, closing her eyes. "Then we'll prove him wrong." She inserted the capsule into the drive. The screen flashed, code spilling like light, then fading. For a moment, silence. Then the words appeared on the monitor. Persistence achieved. 19. The cursor blinked. Once. Twice. Then the lights in her apartment flickered, and somewhere in the dark, faintly, Mira's voice whispered through the static. "You can't save what's already part of you." The screen went black, and outside, across the city, a dozen security cameras blinked to life, each showing the same small girl standing beneath the rain. Identical. Expressionless. Watching.